Welcome to the Healthy Perspective Podcast with your host, chiropractor, entrepreneur, mentor, and author, Dr. Chris Bowman. He'll break down and extract the secret sauce behind his own success and the success of some of the top leaders in every category and from around the world. Get ready for your weekly mental adjustment because shift is going to happen.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Healthy Perspective Podcast. Today we have Ari joining us. Previously, Ari was the CEO of Quest Analytics, the market leader in doctor data and network management. Ari led the company through a pivotal growth stage from 15 mil to 40 mil in revenue. Before joining Quest, Ari was a co-founder and CEO of BetterDoctor, a doctor search engine. When not working or co-parenting his two young children with his wife, Ari spends his time on the steep cliffs of the powdery slopes and big cold waves that only Northern California can offer. Ari is a San Francisco-based entrepreneur and the co-founder and CEO of the smart nutrition service Ōura, where mission is to transform food from the leading cause of disease to medicine. So Ari, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Chris. Great to be here.
And like I said, quite the resume. I mean, I'm familiar with Quest. We used to see people coming in and out of the doctors and whatnot that we support and that we're involved with. Why don't you kind of start from the beginning, with your goal, to be in the health and wellness field? Did you kind of stumble into it, or what kind of started your journey into this CEO and entrepreneurial and health lifestyle?
Yeah, thank you. It's a good question, and I'm one of those people that puts a lot of weight on the why, and we often talk about the what. It's easy to see it on the link wherever, but the why is often much more interesting. And we all have our own life story and story why we do certain things. We decide to spend the precious time we have on the earth, which is often limited,
right,
as we know.
Right.
So for me, I've been an kind of entrepreneur, a builder for a long time. I got into tech in high school days already. I was one of the early people who played video games and got paid to play video games.
Wow.
Kind of the dream for any high
Right.
schooler today. And I was one of the first people who kind of was selling virtual goods in the first online games in 95,
Wow.
96. And it was cool. My mom always thought that I'm a drug dealer, but I was only selling stuff in games, which is kind of like a drug anyway. So
right.
Same
right.
thing.
Right.
But that led me into into tech. So I studied computer science and business, and ended up in a startup right in the first year in college. My roommate started a company doing websites, I think like 99 or like Web 1.0 early.
Wow.
And that kind of led then to many things. I spent a long gig at Nokia back in the days when Nokia was developing the first smartphones. We called them mobile computers back in the days, before iPhone and Android. Some people might remember.
Right.
Nokia was the most valuable company in the world at the time.
Wow.
And I was there kind of running some apps and game studios. We built a lot of the first mobile games, and some people might have played like Snake and others that the teams made. And that was interesting to see kind of and witness firsthand what the mobile revolution was all about. But then on the why, I had a health scare. My wife had a thyroid tumor 20 plus years ago.
Wow.
And that into autoimmune diseases and very difficult to get. And we used a lot of Western medicine, Eastern medicine. We worked with a lot of different doctors and try to find a remedy. And in the end, we found that food and nutrition was the medicine that did work better than any medicine, because the hormonal conditions, autoimmune diseases are these unknowns. We don't really know. We don't have a one pill that you can take and heal yourself. It's often a very complicated thing that you need to do something like lower inflammation or try to anyway help the body to heal itself. And we did keto type of diet a long time ago, over 15 years ago, and it did help heal her body. And And that was kind of the beginning for me, that I started to believe that the food is not only fuel, it's really medicine when you apply it right. And now, of course, later we can all see that the fact that we are eating the ultra-processed foods is really causing a massive epidemic that most of us are going to be sick at some point in our life. And it takes a long time, maybe 20 years to get. Most of us are going to be type 2 diabetic and have heart disease in the end. And many of us are going to die younger than our parents do or did. So that's kind of the why. And I think I started the BetterDoctor company to help people find doctors. And it was really fun 10-year journey to go from few employees or a couple founders, and then in the end becoming a fairly big business. And now with Elo, I'm really trying to do the second chapter in my entrepreneurial career. And the same thing for food. We are aiming to build a company that can really help million people get better diet and better nutrition and help them heal themselves or stay healthy, depending where you are in your slope.
That's amazing, and what a journey going from playing games and, watching the tech revolution happen, and also having this health experience, and then being able to, blend the two and seeing that. I mean, it's almost like right place, right time, right skills, right passion, like right work ethic. And that's so cool to be a part of launching, just really the revolutionary way that we're looking at food and looking at health and using our technology. I graduated undergrad in 2011. I was a bachelor's in exercise science, and that was right when a little bit after was when like the Fitbits and stuff came out. And I remember emailing my ex-phys teacher, and I was like, "Have you seen this?" And he's like, "If people need a watch to motivate them to work out and this and that, like they're totally missing the point." And it's just crazy seeing almost every single person that I know wears some sort of health tracking information. And while it can be hurtful, I mean, I think it's actually opened the world to, now we have, Apple has so much data on health and wellness, and we're able to understand now that like disease doesn't just happen to you, it's happening over time. Just because you get diagnosed with a thyroid condition or an autoimmune condition or whatever, that doesn't mean it started at that moment the diagnosis happened. It probably started growing 10, 15, 20 years ago, when we were putting back Mountain Dew and Flamin' Hot Cheetos and all the other things before we were aware of what food can do to us. And it's still amazing to me, with all those advancements and understandings, that still, at least here in the United States, medical doctors and nurses are getting less than one semester, if that, of nutrition. And so I really do think it's up to people like you in the private sector, not only from an educational standpoint. It's like food affects you. Like, it's people like, "Oh, you can't eat fish oil and it's going to be good for your brain." I'm like, well, have you taken in alcohol and it affected your brain? Like fish oil works in the same manner, just good for you, so what exactly is this company doing that's kind of bridging the gap between education, but then making it easy and practical for people to apply to their own lives?
Yeah, I think you put it actually really well. And you're so right that there is this massive trend. Is because of COVID, but it has been going for a long time, that people want to take a bit more ownership of their own health, becoming their own CEO. We can't rely on somebody to help us. I mean, we are the ones who are stuffing us with the food we eat. We are making the decision. Nobody can for you. And another point that is very key here is I can help people, and companies like Elo can help people give the tools to do the right things. But in the end, we can't create the motivation. The motivation has to be inside you. And it's like anything, like everybody wants to start a new hobby or new thing in January, and most people have forgotten the whole thing by mid-February. So
Right.
that's kind of how we have to have that motivation in us. So we based very much like you said, there are three things that are making this world possible in nutrition. Number one is the wearable devices, they became ubiquitous. So almost everybody, like you said, has a wearable device, Apple Watch or Whoop or Ōura. And it's interesting because at Nokia, I was directly involved with the team nearby me. Long time ago, they invented the step counter and they started to put it in the phones. And that was actually in the phone was still from the landscape to portrait and so forth automatically, because it's so annoying that you had to turn the photos around at them on the old phone and old cameras. So that chip landscape or portrait, and that chip was very powerful. The same chip put on the Nintendo Wii controller, and the guys just hacked into it and they found that they can build a step counter, and they came up with the 10,000 steps. And that was all done like 15 years ago at Nokia. And suddenly, they added that on every phone. And you had millions of people around the world using the early Nokia phones for the 10,000 steps. And they had this sound, da when you reached it. And it had a big impact on people. So I saw it then that there's something big in this idea of gamifying and quantifying our activities and things like that. Because in the end, if you can measure something, you can improve it. The second thing that is impacting companies like is the biomarker testing. Think about biomarkers of blood or saliva or DNA or urine or whatnot. Those are making it possible to collect data ongoingly and show people outcomes. Because again, if you can measure it, you can improve it. Mm-hmm. And then lastly, I think what really has made a big difference in the COVID is food delivery. We all have used DoorDash and Uber Eats and many other services. And now most people in the US have tried them and fell in love with them. So they're not going to go away. So now you have this sort of platform of data, and then you have also a platform from the food delivery perspective and nutrition delivery perspective that you can actually build this. We don't, at Elo, we don't need to create another Dashers or people on their bikes in the city. We don't need to invent a new way of collecting blood of people. We can deploy the ones that are innovating and inventing the new ways and partnering with them and building a platform that really focuses on the middle, which is the brain that is taking you and giving you the sense on what should you have for food, supplement, and so forth.
But that's incredible. And I love that, because so many companies want to go back to the drawing board and recreate the wheel, but instead we can advance technology even faster, where it's like, well, what are the machines? What is the data? What is the data collection? What are the things that we already have? And how can we now master it, rework it, and employ it in, like you said, in new ways? And that's going to allow for even greater of transformation, instead of trying to own like the whole market. Like, we got to have blood collection, this, everything all in house. And I think that's really the future. That's really what collaboration is all about. Now, when you're talking about people, changing their health and, whatnot, there's all these various, diets. You got the keto diet, you got the, the blood type diet, you got all those, different things. How is Elo, or how do you think people can wade through the various, amounts of information that's out there to make a diet plan or an eating plan that fits them?
It's a really good question from the perspective that often think about what a diet is, and I'm always telling people that the diet is an artificial construct that we are limiting the eating to something our brain can understand and keep track of. That's what the diet is like. You're not going to eat meat. You're only going to eat fish, or you're going to only be vegan, or you're not going to eat carbs, or like elimination. And many of the diets that we talk today about, they are not very impactful, and they often are very difficult to follow. They might even be harmful in terms for people, because if you eat very narrow type of diet, you might actually miss out nutrients that might be very important for your body. So what we think at Elo, as we have computer and even artificial intelligence that can actually help you, you don't need to think about diet in the same way. A person can never calculate the macros properly. a person can never calculate the micros because they're so complicated. The macros, like the vitamins and minerals, are you getting the right amount? That's almost impossible to calculate, even if you use an app like MyFitnessPal or something like that.
Right.
So we're trying to make it, easy for people to kind of deliver them the right nutrition that their body actually needs. And in the beginning, we launched the first products out early this year. After having a 1-year trial, the first product basically is blood-based supplementation. So not made for blood, but we do a blood biomarkers, test them, 13 biomarkers, and then based on those, we give you supplements, daily packs that are helping you to find first and then fill your nutrient gaps in your body. And think about this, you know the market well, and you talk to a lot of people in the space, but basically 100 plus million, maybe 150 million people in the US eat supplements every day, for a powder, a pill, or whatnot. Wow. And 150 million people of them don't know if they eat the right things or if they get any benefit. It's basically all the way. And we know, like you said, oil is likely good for everybody. Vitamin D is probably good for people. Alpha lipoic acid is great for moms and in pregnancy and so forth. There's a few things that really are important, but often the case is that people might have surprising problems, like they might have low iron and they are tired because of that. They might have too high B vitamins, and then they are surprised by the urine looks weird and smells weird. So there are a lot of these things that people just don't know because they are living in this world that you can't measure any of that stuff. And at Elo, we bring the measurement into this game of supplementation in the beginning. And that's pretty powerful because we find out that 90% of people who come into Elo something on red or deep on the biomarkers. And those are something that we can help them then improve.
Right. That's incredible. I love that personalized approach. And, I think that's where medicine has to go, especially here in the United States, where a lot of things are based around what insurance covers, what insurance approves, whatever. It's based on really outdated averages, and medicine really and healthcare has to be personalized. And so that's what I love about, what you just said. It's not just about taking a supplement, but which ones are right for my body. It's not just about eating these foods, but which ones are right for my body. Because a lot of people can start eating kale salads every day, and it's actually going to hurt them rather than help them if they're sensitive to oxalates or, like those sort of things. So I love that it's a personal approach to health and wellness. Now, I'm interested, I probably will never run a company, at least a service-based chiropractic company, as big as what you've been able to do with Quest and hopefully Elo and BetterDoctor. Do you get any sort of pushback from, conventional medicine or mainstream news or, anything like that when trying to do things a little bit different than what the narrative or whatnot might be?
It's interesting when you start something new, you often start it because of your personal kind of almost like a vendetta.
Right.
Something happened to you, or you felt wronged, or you think that the existing way of doing things is just so wrong that you have to make it different. That's often the beginning of a lot of entrepreneurs, and often the great stories start by something like that. But then in the end, when you get a bit further, you often realize that things are like they are because of many different factors that are very difficult to change. And the world is often very kind of stuck in the way of doing things, who pays, and like in healthcare, especially, like the system is basically driven by three different pillars. You have the payers who are paying, think about employers or the health insurance companies or government. Then you have the providers who are giving care, and then you have drug companies, medical device companies who are creating the drugs, the medical devices. So they're all almost equally large, over $1 trillion each, and they all work against each other in a way. There's a really difficult system to change. And I was very much like a renegade in the beginning when we started the BetterDoctor, for example. Mm-hmm. And in the end, we became a partner for most of these big health insurance companies, and even government agencies.
Wow.
So you kind of have to be humble, and in order to make a change happen, you need to be pragmatic as well. You can't burn the house down and then build a new house. It's just
Right.
often too difficult to do. Sometimes it happens, like Google has done that many times, that they on Amazon, they go to market and they just destroy the market. And that's one way to think about it. But I don't think you can do that for healthcare. That is so instrumental for our society. We need care, and the system today is maybe not perfect, but it does good work. I mean, like your point about the personalization, the traditional healthcare today is doing pretty amazing work on some things like cancers and stuff, where we can actually sequence the tumor. We can create therapies that are only specific to you. That's pretty science fiction stuff. But some other things we do very poorly, like preventive care or preventative care. We just don't have a vehicle today to help people before they get sick.
Right.
And your point about MDs having maybe one class of nutrition is true, and it's tough to educate them. I think many doctors I know well, they have ridiculed me on the idea of building the company that we're doing now. And I mean, that's fair. I mean, that it's not the world they know, and it's a world that is surprising and maybe scary a little bit, and maybe even challenging them to think differently, which is often scary.
Right. Yeah, and that's, I think, the task that we have before us. And fortunately, I think one shift that I've seen in my practice, I'd never seen as many nurses in my practice getting chiropractic care as I did during, the height of the COVID pandemic. And I don't know if they're just overworked and super tired and worn out, or starting to question a little bit the advice that, that everybody was getting, or is chiropractic really, like the horror stories, or, any of those sort of things. And I think it's really cool to start to see a shift in a lot of the people that are in the trenches, because I think the nurses are providing the majority of care. The doctors just come in, prescribe, and leave. Like, there's largely not a great doctor-patient relationship, but the nurses, I feel like, are starting to understand, and I don't want to use the term wake up, but just be more open to things other than what they just learned in school, or what their doctor is prescribing or recommending. And so hopefully the influence with the nurses now can start to influence the MDs a little bit, where it's like, hey, why am I so dogmatic, or why am I so, and I think you can go many different ways with that conversation. I mean, if they do go, in a sense, away from what maybe their malpractice insurance wouldn't recommend, or what's not standard of care, they can get in trouble. So there's much more than just doctors not wanting to do different things. If they don't give somebody a drug and that's the standard of care, and something happens, I mean, they could technically, perhaps be liable. So there's a lot of legislation and whatnot that needs to change to protect doctors to go do things that they feel like is right, that may not have double-blind, placebo-controlled trials, because you're never going to get that with holistic care. Like, you can't give I don't know, avocado seed, it's got this real high and anti-cancerous B vitamin. You can't give that to every cancer patient and expect the same thing to happen, because all cancer is different. All things are different. You're never going to be able to really conduct clinical trials in holistic medicine as you're going to be able to do in clinical, with set drugs, set receptors, set and whatnot. What do you think is the opportunity with a company like Elo, or the data that we have with Apple Watches and HRV and all these sort of things? What do you think this data and big collaborative things like Viome and whatnot, where it's this massive amount of data that's coming in that can help maybe shift the perspective on at least just affirming nutrition and hydration plays a major role in prevention of disease? How do you think that can start to sway legislation or insurance standards, or like those sort of things?
There's a lot that will happen, and it all starts from the data, because if you think about healthcare and human health, it's really mainly about data and information we collect about our bodies by different things. It can be imaging, it can be samples of biomarkers, or it can be pain, or describing a patient can describe different things, and that's, I think, your world is very interesting because there's some stigma because people talk about the stories when somebody's neck got worse or whatnot, and I personally have a story that was, I think, more positive in a sense that I had a neck, my C67 was disc was broken a little bit when I was surfing in Hawaii and Pipeline years ago.
Wow.
And my left arm went completely numb for multiple months, and my doctor recommended maybe a surgery to glue the joint together in a way that this doesn't matter, and I didn't like doing that. And in the end, I went to this one chiropractor in San Francisco who's very well known, and I don't know if what he did helped or if the timing just happened to be right. But basically after 5-10 sessions, I started to feel better, and after a few months, it was healed. But it was really scary because you lose feeling of your arm completely. I'm left-handed, so stuff I barely was able to read or write with my left hand at all. So I was like, is this it in a way?
Right.
And so, but I think there was he made an impact on somehow opening the nerves in a way that I got my feeling back, and then I in the end recovered almost fully. So I mean, you are living in a world that is equally controversial than my field. So we're in the same camp here in a way. We have to, of course, show the outcomes and so forth. But really, the data is going to be the key. And I think the data that we are collecting with the wearable devices today is the very beginning of a massive revolution. Think about this as a 1.0, and just think about what would the 8.0 look like when we are able to monitor our blood in real time. We can monitor our glucose in real time without pricking a hole into our skin. And we're going to have hundreds of millions of people wearing these devices on a daily basis. I mean, that world will be very different than what we have today. And that's why I'm building the company I'm building today, because I believe that will happen fairly quickly. And once it does, we have, and you referred to Apple Health, and my other co-founder on the Elo today, he was a decade at Apple in the Apple design team, working with Johnny Ive, and he was involved in building Apple Health and others, and instrumental person in that activity. So it's kind of interesting that you're gonna have that knowledge and somebody who actually was creating this revolution there. And Apple is maybe the most impactful company we will have in healthcare from the perspective of collecting data. And at Elo, we are fully connected to Apple Health in a way that if you want, you can open up not only your activity data and your sleep data and recovery, but you can also open up to Elo your clinical data and your medical record and your blood biomarker data from your other labs. And that's all doable today almost with every health system. And that is going to be a game changer, because suddenly when you can get the data in one place, you can do studies that, maybe they are not the same as the double-blind, placebo, but they will be real-world evidence studies with hundreds of millions of people. And most people are going to have the data there, and then we can actually see what impacts. And then the question comes like, how do we know what did you do? And that's a big problem with nutrition. And it's very difficult to do a study, because people, if you ask them what did they do, they don't list the pizza or the beer that they had at 11 p.m. People forget. we all forget. So all the studies done on nutrition today that are reported by people are pretty, they don't really matter a whole lot. I think many of them are just not real at all. So we need to build a better way to actually somehow measure what people get in. And that's kind of part of the Elo idea, where we are delivering you the nutrition. So we know what's in that nutrition or meal or whatever we give you. And then we can actually know what you did and what you ate and what the outcomes were. So that feedback loop will be the key, I think, to understand the real impact. I don't think anyone disagrees if you take a medical doctor or decision maker or politician. I think they all agree that food and nutrition has a big impact, but nobody has yet been able to quantify it to a level that it would be easy for, let's say, Medicare and Medicaid and employers to say that, hey, we are more than happy to subsidize your food. Now we work at home often, and we get maybe a voucher from our employer to eat food. But people end up eating the pizza and the beer. So what if the food would be, if you eat the right food, it's free for you. I mean, that will be the compelling change we're gonna see in the next 5 to 10 years, and that will be the beginning of healing us from the chronic conditions we have today.
Right. It's really interesting. I know we're coming close on time, so I don't want to overstep my welcome, but I'm a chiropractor, and then my home, we live on a little bit of a farm. We're not stacked on houses on top of each other like you are in the city. And it's really interesting being involved in this like homestead world. There's a company called Homesteaders of America. They've been around for a while. But they sold out an event in Virginia in October, 5,000 tickets 3 months ahead of the event. And it's like $400 tickets. Like, it's not like a dollar, you know what I mean? Like, it's a significant gathering. And now there's little homestead events popping up. In Ohio, we're having one in February. We just had one in June. And it's really interesting that not only are people interested in their food for the sake of food is more interesting, but it's almost this behind the scenes as well. It's like, well, where does my food come from? Why can I eat? You might I don't know what I'm trying to say. You might recognize this is true coming just from the UK. Why can I eat pasta or bread in the United States and my tummy gets grumbly, or I get eczema, whatever, but then I go overseas to Italy and I eat pasta or wine, or whatever it is, and I feel totally, I eat all the ice cream or whatever that I want, and I feel totally fine. And I think for me, that's what's going to be the most interesting change with the data that companies like yours, nutrition companies, that is tracking, because right now they say that there is no nutritional difference between like a genetically modified corn and a organically grown corn, or a cow fed with this growth hormone and whatnot. Like, you'll see it on your milk. It said from cows not treated with hormonal milk, with an asterisk, and on the back, if you read the asterisk, it says no differences has been shown between this cow or the other. But I think what's going to be really interesting down the road is we're really going to start to understand, okay, so this person eats a tomato and this person eats tomato, but this person's whatever acids went way up, or this person's inflammatory response went way up. They have the same gene markers, or whatever, like they're not autoimmune to it. What is going on? And we're going to start to understand, like, man, not only is the food that we eat, the type of food that we obviously not processed and whatnot important, but where our food comes from is even more important. And I think that's going to drive further, like, well, shoot, I can grow my own tomatoes. So I have a balcony, or I can grow my own, whatever it is. And then that's going to change farming. It's like, if this data proves that the corn that these 9 or 10,000 acre farms is producing nutritionally weak food, rather than nutritionally dense food, man, think of the impact on the agricultural industry. And then you look at that, and it's like, okay, so the government is subsidizing these farmers. And so if the government started subsidizing regenerative agriculture, I mean, it's like this data that you can provide isn't just going to change the way, MDs prescribe medications, but it could, like you said, pattern interrupt the whole entire system, because your theories are based on the way that we're growing our food right now is not inherently bad. There's no difference. But if you have data that proves actually there is a significant difference between food grown in your backyard, regenerative agriculture, whatever it is, versus mass controlled, processed, whatever food. My gosh, imagine what that would do.
I love your point. And by the way, just before we started, I was having lunch in our garden backyard.
That's awesome.
And we were picking up our blueberries and blackberries and
I
kale.
love it.
So I'm lucky enough to have a big garden in San Francisco, but that's not for everybody, maybe.
Amazing, yeah.
But other point that you made is super relevant. I was sitting on a plane yesterday next to a lovely lady, and she had been in Spain for 2 months, and she said to me, every time I come to Spain or Italy, I lose weight.
Yep.
Every time I return home, I gain weight immediately. And that's pretty interesting. Think about it, you go on a vacation and you lose weight.
Right.
How is that possible?
Right.
And I think the point about nutrition and agriculture. There's a link that many people haven't thought about it, and there's a long discussion we could have later.
Of course.
But just the point about this is that my firm belief is this: that we have this massive problem that is hitting us in the next 20 years, which is the climate change. And it's so dry here in California already that we are suffering every day. It is dry as bone in Italy and Spain this summer. It's been hotter than ever in Europe. We're talking about 100-degree hot for many months. Even in UK, they had 100 degrees. They never have had 100 degrees ever before.
Wow.
But what's happening now is that if we can't get the nutrition in check, and if we can't stop this epidemic of us getting obese, we will not be able to ever solve the climate problems. Because what happens now is that many people are getting obese, and we can't think about the future generations when we are feeling sick and we are worried about ourselves.
Yep.
We need to not worry about ourselves to be able to worry our grandchildren's children, for example, and what type of world we're going to leave to them. So we have to fix this bad food problem first before we can address the second one, which is the problem of climate.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's something that we talk about every day in the practice. You're either in fight or flight, worrying about your immediate needs, that either be financial, food, shelter, whatever it is, or you're in a state of ease and parasympathetic, where you're actually able to make rational decisions, use your prefrontal cortex instead of your amygdala, which is reactive and whatnot. And you're right. If you're sick, if you're inflamed, if you don't have the basic necessities of life for your body to thrive, for your brain to thrive, we're never going to be able to dig our way, out of this hole. And so I love the implications of your mission and your vision of what you're doing. I love your passion. I love your skill set. I mean, I think everything about who you are and what you're doing is going to have a massive impact on changing the world. I'm excited to be able to look back on the day when I did a podcast with you, and the world is a better place because of you and your company. So thank you so much for joining us. If people are interested in your company and joining on board, why don't you give us some more information where people can find out more about you or how to jump on?
Yeah, I would love to, have people hop on and test Elo. We make it really easy to get on board today. So you can go to elo.health. Elo.health is the website, and you can sign up today for blood biomarker-based supplements. And for $99 a month, you will get tested every now and then to understand the outcomes in the beginning. You get supplements every month. And we are even giving you a dietitian that you can work one-on-one to get the right plan for you, not only for the supplements, but also for your food and so forth. And that person will be there for you every day if you want to talk with them over the Elo app. So $99 a month is a pretty good price to try. And, there's no need to commit to a year. You can try it out and see if it's for you. I would love to hear feedback.
It's incredible. Yeah, I'll jump on and check it out for sure. One question I did have about that, when recommending things as a practitioner, I care about not only are you getting vitamin D or B or vitamin C, but is it lab made ascorbic acid or like those sort of things. These supplements that you're giving out to these people, what are they sourced from? Do you know?
Great question. So we have been spending now a couple of years on finding the right nutrients first that have a real clinical evidence. So we have about 4,000 human trial clinical studies that are defining what we are giving to people and how much. The dosing is coming from these studies. You can even see the studies, by the way, on your app, and you can read them there if you want. So we are having I think we have 80 active ingredients today that we are giving to people in the Elo program. Of course, you will get some of them, not all of them. Sure. And then every product we have today, we have now tested in a third-party lab to understand, do they really have the right dosing, and do they have any heavy metals and toxins that are very common in the supplement space. And some of the ingredients might come from China. We try to be very, very focused on getting the right ingredients. They're not only coming from the US because we don't produce all the different ingredients, but everything is tested. And we have actually tested products and we have not bought them because they were not meeting the requirement. Wow. So there's a lot of stuff in, even if you go to Whole Foods, there's a lot of stuff on the shelves that are not the right stuff.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's great to know. And, knowing the founder and the person behind the whole thing, want someone that's of integrity, that's what's most important to me. If you wouldn't take it, if you wouldn't give it to your kids, then why would I do it? So knowing that you're a part of it and you're passionate about it, and you're doing it for your family, you got my full support. So thank you so much for joining me. I'm super thankful for this conversation. Hopefully we can do another one in the future, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. And thanks for the nice words.
Thank you for listening to the Healthy Perspective Podcast. To connect with Dr. Bowman, follow him on Instagram @Dr. Chris Bowman. Until next time, make shift happen.